I'll give you one example of this is what's happening in the oil and gas sector right now. If the thought experiment, I think I said this on CNBC a few weeks ago. If you do that just as a thought experiment, you got the CEOs of Exxon, ConocoPhillips, and Chevron, and BP, and Shell, all right, get together in a room, and they coordinate to decide to cut gas production, and then gas prices spike at the pump as a result of that. We have a word for that in this country. It's called price fixing. It's an antitrust violation. Cut and dry, that's a problem. But somehow now the largest asset managers in the world force those companies through shareholder mandates. I use shareholder in air quotes, but shareholder mandates to do the same thing. And somehow we celebrate that as ESG instead. This is something that's duping the everyday citizen. And it gets even worse. You just go layer after layer. You peel this onion, it gets more and more rotten the closer you get to the core. So let's take that example further. They had them cut oil production, right? How do they do it? Well, BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard, they voted in favor of 3 dissident directors that made it onto the board of Exxon last year as part of an activist campaign for a revised climate change strategy at Exxon. All right. So before this activist campaign, Exxon's business plan was to increase oil production by 25% over the next 5 years, 2020 to 2025. Afterwards, they seat the new directors. Exxon changes its business plan. They change Exxon's business plan to reduce oil production 20% from those prior forecasts in that same period. Now, you would think that that's bad enough, and it is bad enough. I mean, look, Exxon's a less successful company, in my opinion, as a result. There's a gas shortage. There's an oil shortage in the country. Gas prices are spiking. Coordinated action against America's largest oil company, the world's largest oil company, to be able to cut oil production at that inopportune time. That's bad enough, right? Now, you would think that maybe the climate change activists would be happy if those projects are no longer proceeding. But guess what? Those projects are absolutely proceeding. They're just spun off and sold to other parties who are pursuing them. Let's take an example of one of the parties who's at the front of the line to pick up some of those profitable projects that Exxon is dropping. None other than PetroChina. Now, you want the cherry on top? Look up who is one of the largest shareholders of PetroChina. None other than BlackRock. I could make this stuff up if I tried. All right. So one of the largest shareholders of Exxon say they need a revised climate change strategy. And so they need to drop oil production as a U.S. company over here, when the same projects in the name of fighting climate change are still happening on God's green same earth in China. But the companies that are able to pick it up, like PetroChina, are owned by the same firms that gave one shareholder mandate to Exxon and a different shareholder mandate to a Chinese company, leaving the American investors holding the bag. You cannot represent diverse client interests, conflicting client interests, if you're going to be a vocal activist, and still be a good fiduciary for both of them. It's like being a lawyer representing the plaintiff and the defendant in the same case. You can't give the vocal argument for both and still be a good legal fiduciary for both. The same thing applies to being a financial fiduciary. So I think the whole thing is a scam at every level. They have covered it in the veneer of virtue. We live in this apologist moment for American capitalism after the 2008 financial crisis that allowed BlackRock to swoop in and fill the void, douse its self-interested game in the veneer of virtue. And unfortunately, our culture bought it for the last decade. But now I think people are hungering for something different. They're starting to see through the act. It's a big part of what my book is all about, is describing the magic act at the heart of this fake form of modern American capitalism to revive the real thing.
Hey, you, do you still have your Bitcoin on an exchange? Don't hold your Bitcoin on an exchange. Take it into self-custody. If you're looking for an easy way to do that, we have the BitKey. BitKey is Bitcoin made easy to use and hard to lose. Take the first step, get your Bitcoin off the exchange. Check out the link in the show notes. That'll get you 20% off your BitKey, or use the code TFTC20 at checkout.